Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here for this important event and this important election. We're heading towards primary day in June. Actually, exactly 2 months from today, June 23rd, is primary day. There will, of course, be early voting before that, June 13th through 21st, and mail-in voting if you want to take advantage of that leading up to primary day. This race in New York's 12th Congressional District is one of the most competitive and most watched Democratic primaries in New York and beyond, as I'm sure most of you are aware. And it's great to have all of you here tonight and anybody watching afterward taking this in, and we'll get to our candidates very shortly. I'm Ben Max. I'll be moderating tonight, and this event is co-sponsored by the American Constitution Society New York Lawyers Chapter, as well as the Fordham Law Chapter of the Society. It's also co-sponsored by our hosts here, the New York City Bar Association and the Election Law Committee of the City Bar. Just a brief bit about our hosts. The American Constitution Society for Law and Policy, ACS, is the nation's foremost progressive legal organization with a diverse nationwide network that includes nearly 250 student and lawyer chapters and progressive lawyers, students, judges, scholars, elected officials, and advocates. The New York City Bar Association, the City Bar, was founded in 1870 as a voluntary association of lawyers and law students. The City Bar's mission is to equip and mobilize a diverse legal profession to practice with excellence, promote reform of the law, and uphold the rule of law and access to justice in support of a fair society and the public interest in our community, our nation, and throughout the world. Thank you again to our hosts here at the Bar Association. Just briefly about me, I've been a New York politics and government journalist for about 15 years now. I currently run programming at the Center for New York City and State Law at New York Law School. I have sort of a journalist in residence position there. I teach a little bit, moderate a lot of public conversations like this one, and I hope you will join us at New York Law School sometime soon. Do a lot of other things there, and also host a podcast called Max Politics, where I interview elected and appointed officials and policy experts and others. And I'll put the audio of tonight's event in that podcast feed in case you need to relive any moments here in the days to come, or you want to share it with others who couldn't make it. All right, let's get to our forum here. We have 7 candidates with us. A couple of our candidates have told us last minute that they weren't able to make it, or maybe there's a chance they'll slide in late. But we have 7 great candidates here. Given the size of the group, we're going to keep things moving pretty quickly. I have an exciting format plan here, so we get to a lot and try to make sure that we're not going too long between candidates' chances to speak. So we're going to start with a 90-second opening statement from each candidate. Most of the questions I'll ask after that, I'm unfortunately only going to be able to give you 60 seconds to start, but I'll ask some follow-up questions and we'll have a good conversation. Please be ready for me to jump in with those follow-up questions. One of the things I'll often ask you candidates is if you can provide a specific example or a specific policy that fits with maybe some of the broader language you're using, so no surprise there. I also have a variety of lightning round style questions. I know some people like those, some people don't, but we're trying to get to a lot here in a short time. So keep your wits about you for those. We have a timekeeper right in the front here. Carl is going to help us. He has 2 signs. Keep an eye out. One says 10 seconds left, and the other says end. So keep an eye on Carl there, and I'll try not to interrupt you, but please try to wrap up. If a candidate criticizes another candidate, I'll give you a quick chance to respond, but we can't have too much back and forth at this size of the field here. Okay, so let's start our first round. We'll change it up round by round, but let's start our first round down from the left here with 90-second opening statements. Please introduce yourself and get us started here, Micah.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Micah Bergdale. I have operated a business here in New York City for the past 20 years. Focused on transit in particular. Most recently, I've been working on electric vehicle transportation, and previously focused on mass transit here in New York City. I'm a passionate advocate for the underserved communities throughout New York City and have been working tirelessly to make sure that we have access to transit throughout New York City, and transit that works and that's effective for everyone. And that's a big part of why I'm running for Congress. I feel like there aren't any transit advocates or experts that are in Congress, and there's really a need because it impacts everybody's daily life. Whether you are taking the subway, taking the bus, taking a ferry, driving here in New York City, you need to have transit experts that are actually in Congress. And it's a big thing that I'm really focused on, and it's why I'm running for Congress. So thank you, and please check us out.
Thank you. George.
Hi, I'm George Conway. I spent 30 years just a few blocks north of here at a law firm. I had a full career here in New York City, and I spent more time than I can imagine in this building, sometimes in this room, watching CLE courses, sometimes on a panel, mostly CLE, I have to say. And the reason why I'm running is because of the rule of law. We have never faced a greater threat to the rule of law than Donald Trump. We have a government that is, it's not no longer a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's a government of the boss, by the boss, for the boss, by a man who absolutely has no respect for the law, no respect for his oath, no respect for the Constitution. And it's having a massive effect on how we lead our daily lives. A lot of people say, well, we're tired of talking about Trump. I can't talk about Trump. We need to talk about issues like transportation, which is important. We need to talk about affordable health care. We need to talk about affordable housing. How are you going to do all that with Donald Trump in the White House, with a criminal in the White House, with a man who could not give a hoot about anybody but himself in the White House? You could pass all the legislation you like. He won't sign it. If you trick him into thinking it's a crypto bill, maybe he'll sign it. But even if you did manage to trick him, he won't follow the law. And that's why he needs to be impeached and removed, and that's why we need a lawyer like me, an experienced one, to push for that.
Hi, my name is Diep. I'm a software engineer, and I'm running because I saw my dad live the American dream, and now I'm seeing slipping away from more and more people. So my dad, he's a Vietnamese refugee. He wanted to come to the U.S. I asked him why he chose the U.S. of all places, and he said that even though his uncle is in France, he heard good things about the U.S. soldiers, so good reputation. Moved here, met my mom, got married, had 2 kids, one of them being me, and he bought a house, and he just kept working hard and getting better jobs. I decided to take a risk and move out here to New York with only a carry-on and a suitcase, and I went to Flatiron School to pivot into software engineering. And it's a really good job. I felt really good about that. It was a tough time trying to get it. I talked to my dad, and he told me he just keep looking for the next one. So what I'm seeing is with my friends, it's harder to find those jobs. So yeah, I'm running to help rebuild the American dream for the next 250 years.
Thank you.
I'm going to stand because I'm really short and I want everyone to see me. I'm Laura Dunn. I'm a civil rights attorney who has sued Donald Trump in his first administration. I sued him over Title IX, which is a protection against gender violence and for LGBTQ+ rights. And the reason I did that is because I'm a queer woman and a sexual assault survivor. I fought back for my community, and in the process, I got the attention of President Obama and then President Biden. I have worked to pass the Violence Against Women Act of 2013. I helped draft Section 304. I also served on the rulemaking committee to make the regulations. I advised White House task forces to protect students against sexual assault. I even clerked on the Senate Judiciary for Patrick Leahy. And we all know that highly qualified women tend not to win in office, and you all regret it every single time. So this time, make a different choice and vote for me.
Hey everybody, I'm Jack Schlossberg. I'm a native New Yorker, and I'm running for Congress under the campaign slogan of "Believe in Something Again," which is as dumb as it sounds, but I also think it's true. Our country was built by people who believed in government, who believed in public service, who believed that we could do incredible things if we worked together, and that it was worthwhile to spend your time building a country that had civil rights protections, the strongest on earth, and defended freedom around the world. We can't believe anything that anybody says in our government, at least in the White House right now, and I'll never stop believing in politics, and that's why I'm running. We're at the Constitutional Society today. I have a law degree, and so I want to talk about the First Amendment because it's first for a reason. Freedom of speech in this country is under attack, and not just in the form of silencing critics, but also in the way that dollars are spent in campaigns. The Supreme Court held, money is speech, corporations are people. It has fundamentally corrupted our elections process. My campaign does not accept money from super PACs, corporate PACs, APAC, or big AI technology companies. Two of the candidates who aren't here tonight have super PACs, funded millions of dollars. Mr. Borres, Anthropic, has given his super PAC millions of dollars to run ads on TV. Mr. Lasher has already spent almost $5 million in the last 4 weeks, a rate of about $1 million a week on ads. I think New York City, I think that's the least New York thing you can possibly do. Our campaign doesn't believe that. We're powered by small dollars. Our average contribution is under $40. 60,000 people have contributed to our campaign. And I think that's important, not just because that means you can trust what I say, but because it's forced us to run a campaign where we're actually meeting people and listening to the constituents that we would be elected to serve. So thank you all so much for having me, and thank you to the fellow candidates for being up here. Thanks.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nina Schwalbe, and I'm running for Congress because we are in deep trouble. From vaccines to abortion, from science to SNAP to rule of law, we're losing our democracy and the systems that keep us safe, and it's killing us. We have a measles outbreak now across the United States, 32 states. And in public health, when we have a measles outbreak, it's a sign that our basic systems are failing us. I've spent my career preventing and fixing exactly those types of systems failures. I'm a public health expert. I've delivered billions of vaccines. I've worked in over 100 countries, negotiated with Russia, North Korea, India. I've stood up to big pharma, and I lowered the cost of cervical cancer vaccines by 65%. I faced death threats for this work, and I did it anyway. I'm sixth generation in this district. I'm a lesbian, and I'm a mom. I worked with presidents and prisoners. I've worked in refugee camps and war zones. And I don't fight by screaming or waving my hands. I'm smart. I fight smart, steady, strategic, and we win. So about a year ago, Mr. Trump fired 200,000 of my peers. He gutted life-saving programs, and tens of millions of people lost access to care. And Congress was doing nothing, and I saw the writing on the wall, and that's why I decided to run. So I'm not a celebrity or a billionaire or backed by a billionaire, but I bring a lifetime of experience in public service and deep expertise. So I'm a fighter, a scientist, and a mom, and Washington doesn't know what's coming. So thank you for having me here.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Timmins. I'm a Manhattanite through and through, born in Washington Heights, families from Inwood. My grandparents came off the boat and from Ireland, and they settled in Hell's Kitchen. You may remember my name, Patrick Timmins, because I was the lone defendant opposition to Alvin Bragg last June, and lost, but I got 70,000 votes, of which over 50,000 was from this congressional district. So I'm excited about reconnecting and campaigning like I did 6 months ago, and it's been very receptive. My background is that for 34 years, I've been a criminal and civil litigator. In the 90s, I was an assistant DA in the Bronx during the crack epidemic and the first big gang assault cases, which I tried, got verdicts on them. Thereafter, I became a union. I represent a lot of union retirees who've come down with asbestos cancer, horrible. And I've sued big corporations, gotten good verdicts, helped these people. So I've always been fighting for people. I'm a radical pragmatist. I don't want to work around symbolism. I want to work around substance. I'm against impeaching Trump. I'm against abolishing ICE. I don't think we have time to do that, and they won't work out either. So I'll let you know about that. I look forward to talking a little bit more about some of my programs and some of my policies and new bills, including an immigration blue card. Thank you very much for coming out on a Thursday night.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody, for getting us started. First, quick lightning round here. If everybody would just go down the line and list what you consider your top accomplishment serving the public in whatever capacity or role that might be. What's the number one thing? Maybe you said it in your opening statement, maybe you didn't, but number one specific thing you want people to know that you've accomplished for the public in your time in service of any kind. Why don't we come in the opposite direction here?
Okay, well, I would say two things. One is,
Very quickly.
yeah,
We're just going fast. Yeah.
I've gotten verdicts against Bloods, Latin Kings, and I also been a professor at John Jay for the last 22 years, still teaching.
Thank you.
I delivered 500 million COVID-19 vaccines around the world.
For the last 6 months, I've run a campaign that has introduced me to thousands of New Yorkers that I've met and gotten them incredibly excited about politics in a time when a lot of people feel very disillusioned.
Thank you.
I created a federal law that gave both victims and the accused the right to have attorneys in campus-level proceedings, then made a national nonprofit to enforce that law, and became the leading attorney on this issue.
I volunteered as a kids soccer coach, Volo Kids.
Thank you.
As I said, I spent 30 years up at a law firm not too far from here, and I argued before the Supreme Court. But the best thing I ever did, and what I want on my gravestone, is a reference to a 5-minute conversation I had with E. Jean Carroll when I told her she had a lawsuit, and I found her a lawyer to bring that lawsuit.
I helped launch what was the East River Ferry Service and now is the NYC Ferry Service, and also launched hundreds of electric vehicles in the South Bronx to help reduce the amount of pollution that happens within the South Bronx.
All right, thanks, everybody. All right, we're going to move on to some of your top priorities for the district, but before I do so, I just want to ask a couple quick follow-ups to a couple candidates so far, and I'll be asking follow-ups of probably everybody at different points. But Mr. Conway, let me start with you. I think a lot of people generally know about your anti-Trump activism in various forms, but you were a Republican, you have become a Democrat, you're running in a Democratic primary here. Do you still consider yourself a conservative? How would you sort of explain your political evolution here in the Trump era?
I'm a conservative in the sense that I want to conserve things. My values haven't changed. I believe in freedom of speech, freedom and equality. But we now have, what happened was 40 years ago, it was a different thing to be a conservative Republican than it is today. And I'm no longer a conservative Republican as it's defined by the conservative Republicans today. My values haven't changed. I believe in pragmatic solutions to problems. And I believe in democracy, and that's what I've been doing, basically at great expense to myself for the past 8 years, fighting the autocratic tendencies of this one man.
Mr. Schlossberg, I think some people who know of you are wondering about your resume and what you've accomplished, and I think perhaps your answer to that question about your top accomplishment, citing the campaign, might again raise flags for people about inexperience. Do you want to say a little bit more about qualifications
Absolutely.
for Congress? And
I haven't
what
met
you've
any
done?
of those people, but I'd love if you introduce me to them.
Sure.
Yes, I've been working in politics and in government since Obama ran in 2008, and I went to volunteer on his campaign. I worked at the State Department for Secretary of State John Kerry on environmental policy and helped organize something called the Our Ocean Conference, which was a intergovernmental conference that raised billions of dollars for climate change and ocean conservation. I was a volunteer EMT in college. And while you may not think that content creation and building a following based on speaking out for what you believe in at a time when others were unwilling, taking on your own family members, traveling across the country to every single swing state, serving as a delegate at the DNC is an experience. I do. I think that the Democratic Party has lost a lot of its confidence. We are seen as out of touch. Young people have left our party in droves. I'm very, very proud to have been one of the most forefront campaigners for the Biden-Harris ticket. And I would also say that I participate in giving the Profile and Courage Award out every single year at the John F. Kennedy Library, an institution that I work at all throughout the year. And beyond that, I care about my community.
That's
I
a
mean,
good list.
it seemed like there were a lot of people who were questioning my experience. So I'm involved in local community organizations that feed the homeless here in the city. and I passed the bar in the top
Thank you.
1% of the country.
Ms. Dunn, we're going to start this round with you. We'll go in the same order here, but we'll start with you. On needs for this district, and this will be 60 seconds each, what would you consider, if you were going to Congress, the 2 top district needs that you try to immediately address as a member of Congress, and what you would put at the forefront of your priorities in trying to address those 2 top needs of this district? Thank you.
I think we all know that healthcare is a disaster. We have no way to pay for the bills that are coming in every single day. And if you're like me, that terrifies you. We're one accident away or one illness away from bankruptcy. So my platform has universal health care, and I do believe that Republicans do care about catastrophic coverage and will agree with me that every single person that resides in the United States should be protected against bankruptcy should they become sick or injured. So I want to start with catastrophic care, because Medicare for all is just a talking phrase. We need actual first steps. The second big issue is affordable housing. I want to change how we fund that. Instead of having detached DCS decide what the funding should be, I want a one-to-one match. For every dollar New York City and New York State puts in, I want the federal government to match, because we have a housing crisis here. We need 80,000 homes immediately.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossberg.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure.
please?
What do you consider the top 2 district needs, and what would be your top priority for addressing each?
Couldn't agree more with Laura. Housing crisis is something that I hear about all the time from people. I'm very, very proud to have come up with my own original policy solution to provide immediate relief. We do need to increase the supply, as Laura said. That will take investment and time. Something we can do immediately is something that I proposed, and the first person to do so anywhere is a standard renter's deduction. I think renters should be treated the same as homeowners who borrow against their homes. Deduct your rent from your taxes. It's about fairness. That would save people thousands of dollars a year, maybe even 1 month of rent per year free on me if our policy was passed. Beyond that, fully fund Section 9. Section 9 is seen as out of reach or impossible because people don't think we can get federal dollars for it. I think Donald Trump has shown you can do just about anything if you set your mind to it and make it a priority. So I want to fund Section 9 and build truly affordable housing here in the city.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So starting with healthcare and proposing something called the American Health Security Act, which will do 3 things. It will lower the cost of drugs, which are a major driver of our costs. It will make sure that everybody can see a family provider by expanding community health centers. And it will protect and expand Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act while we work towards a single-payer system. And I'm hoping there'll be more time to talk about health later. The second, as both Jack and Laura said, is about housing. There are federal vouchers. There are these things called warehoused apartments, which are just apartments sitting free. So there's some immediate things we can do while, like Jack, we expand and fully fund Section 9 public housing. And finally, I want to talk about something I heard a lot from voters, which is safety and accessibility. We have an Americans with Disabilities Act, we have an Older Americans Act, and we have 70% of subways in our district that have no elevator. And in Chelsea, we have curbs that wheelchairs can't get up. So we got to start fully funding those programs and then working with the city to make sure they're enforced.
Thank you. Mr. Timmins?
I think that there are 2 that I want to focus on, and a close third is public safety. With housing, I agree. Section 9, we have 5 NYCHA housing sites in this CD12. They need to not have buildings demolished, but new buildings built, and a lot more money to fix the hallway repairs and the apartment repairs. I've had clients in Section 9, so I know it well, and I know the 5 sites pretty well. In terms of affordable housing, I'd like to see more rent-stabilized apartments, more Mitchell-Lama apartments. I've had a rent-stabilized apartment, not now, but for 20 years, a 5-floor walk-up on 3rd and 67th Street. I also want to incorporate a new bill called the Z housing, Generation Z. We're going to build apartments, all studios, just like they do in Manhattan Plaza for the actors, that are just going to be for Gen Z. They get a studio apartment, they get the opportunity to start in New York City. And then with public safety, I was recently endorsed by Ray Kelly. We've got to fix the subways. It's not a safe, comfortable ride. It's tense. There's a lot of tension down there. Cops have to be on the trains. We need more money from the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming down here, Micah.
It's going to be hard to just only name 2, but I would reiterate the healthcare concern. That is what I continue to hear throughout the district, is that healthcare is a serious problem. I am a supporter of Medicare for all, but I'm also open to what pathway is that we actually get there. But I would also say that as it relates to transit and housing in particular, one of the reasons I'm not running for a city office or a state office first is that I've felt like the city and state have actually been their own worst enemy as it relates to getting transit and housing done. One of the perfect examples of that, you may or may not know, is the scaffold law. And one of the problems with that is it constantly creates additional liability costs for anybody that's doing any type of a development. And I will give you a great example of that. The 2nd Avenue subway, which is predominantly funded by the federal government, has an additional $1 billion cost on it purely from the scaffold law that is at the state level. If we just reformed it, if we were like other blue states, like California, for example, and had similar liability laws to them, we would actually save $1 billion there. So I do think that if we can reform things on the federal level, that we'd be able to do more at the state and city partnership.
Thank you.
Affordability and infrastructure. Affordability to me just includes everything. It includes healthcare. It includes the cost of goods that are raised by tariffs. It includes housing. And we have to take steps to improve on all three fronts. I think we need to expand ACA subsidies, and I think we need to have a ACA public option. I think in terms of housing, we need to build all kinds of housing, not just Section 9 housing, not just replacing the NYCHA housing that we have in this district, but encouraging private development by removing obstacles to building private housing. And then infrastructure. We absolutely do need to spend more on transportation. And we need to build a cross-harbor tunnel. We need to finish the Gateway project. But that's, that's something that, these are things that we can't really do to the extent we need to do them without getting rid of Donald Trump.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is cheating, but rising costs and jobs, the Federal Reserve's dual mandate, and then the second one would be, housing. So with the Federal Reserve, a central bank is really important to the economy. So important that Alexander Hamilton traded away the capital. The capital used to be in New York. So we need to make sure to protect it from Donald Trump's interference. Federal Reserve needs to be independent and also keeps the economy balanced with just interest rate tools versus the balance sheet. And then the second part is housing. I really support the 21st Century Road to Housing Act that will limit the amount of Wall Street buyers on the number of housing. That way, housing can be, for people and families to live in.
Thank you. All right, quick lightning round here. We'll start again with Mr. Bergdale down at the end there. A brief word or phrase that you want your constituents, if you're elected to Congress, 6 months into your first term, what's something you'd want them to most associate you with, or a word you'd want them to use to describe you after 6 months on the job? Mr. Bergdale?
One word I would hope that people use for me is empathetic. I genuinely care about people.
We're just going to lightning. I appreciate that. Empathetic. Mr. Conway?
Fighting the corruption of this criminal administration.
Thank you.
Dare to dream. I'll say that again. Dare to dream.
Accountability, not just for Trump, but for the establishment.
Fighting and dancing.
Nina gets stuff done. I would have used another S word, but my mother wouldn't have approved of it.
Radical pragmatist. Let's turn the page here.
All right. Another lightning round here. We're going to start with Mr. Schlossberg here. Infrastructure has come up a couple times already. So in just a brief answer, what's your #1 infrastructure priority for this district to bring federal funds back to New York 12 if you're elected? #1 infrastructure priority to bring funds back to the district.
Do you mean the way to bring the funds or the project?
No, the
to be
project,
funded?
the infrastructure project.
Well, I think the subways are basically what makes New York, New York, and we can do a lot better than what we've got now. So
Okay.
I would love to make sure we've got better subways and
Subways. Thank you.
subways.
Transit.
Housing.
You're going to be surprised to hear me say transit, so.
Well, let me stop everybody there. Transit's very general. Anything, investment in the subways, anything more specific on transit?
I mean, and I've also mentioned it, Second Avenue subway is a priority, particularly for this district. It runs down the heart of this district. And I would add the Gateway Tunnel that connects New Jersey into Manhattan
Thank
is
you.
also a priority.
Mr. Conway?
Ditto. Transit, trains, beneath the waves,
Okay.
Cross Harbor Tunnel, all of these things. I mean, it's just crucial to not just New York City, but the entire Eastern Seaboard.
Mr. Diep?
I want to join the transit party, high-speed rail, bullet trains, public-private partnership.
Okay. Where's the bullet train going?
Let's
Between?
start with, oh, this is fun. Let's go to DC. I'm
Okay.
going to DC.
Ms. Dunn?
I actually think we need crosstown trolleys because it's impossible to get across town and buses are way too slow. So let's be creative and get outside the box.
Okay. All right. Next, we're talking about legislative priorities. Some of you might have gotten into this a little bit in your prior answer, but in terms of pieces of legislation you would prioritize right away if you were entering the House, especially for the sake of discussion here, assuming a Democratic majority in the House, what pieces of legislation, top two, would you prioritize and why? A minute each on this. We'll start with you, Mr. Timmins, down there in the end. What would be your top two legislative priorities in Congress, either introducing your own legislation or championing something that's already there?
I want to introduce the blue card for immigrants. The blue card would consist of, if you've been here 10 years, you've been working, contributing to society, and you've stayed out of trouble with the criminal justice system, you get a blue card. You get a legal status for the next 15 years to work hard and to move toward naturalization. I'd also want to get involved in the housing crisis here that, like I said, Section 9 needs to be totally done. No demolitions, though. That's what the people don't want. But also middle-income housing, Z housing now, and I also want to help co-op and condominium owners reduce these maintenance increases because they're based on oil, taxes, and insurance, and the management agents don't fight enough for those co-op owners.
Can you just expand on your blue card idea there? Who's eligible for that?
If you're an undocumented immigrant, you've been here 10 years, and you can show that you've been contributing to society, most of them do have a Social Security number, and that you've stayed out of trouble, you would have the eligibility to get the legal status of the blue card, and then you have 15 years to show what you're made of, and then you have the path to naturalization.
Okay. Mr. Bergdale, top two legislative priorities if you're entering a Democratic majority in the House.
So this one's a little bit obscure, but it has been talked about before, and I always like this, and I'm with a group of lawyers here, so you should probably know this, but the very First Amendment was actually focused on the size of the districts in the United States, and it actually limited people to 50,000. That's a little small for this day and age, but we have congressional districts that have more than a million people in them. It's one of the reasons that we have to raise insane amounts of money in order to even be able to run for Congress. The nice thing is that in order to increase the size of the House, it's actually a very simple legislative process to be able to do that. And I think by doing that, even a district like this could have 3-4 different representatives. I've said this before, there's some great people that I'm running against here. I'd love to be able to see representatives for the East Side and Midtown and Upper West Side, and we could do that if we actually had more localized districts, which is one of the things that we've called for. And then immigration reform is near and dear to my heart. My partner is an immigrant from Peru. His family is from Peru. And it's deeply personal to me that we actually have some level of reform as it relates to immigration.
Just for clarity, how big is the House of Representatives in your plan?
Well, I would say probably at least one for every 250,000 people would be ideal, but
So 3 times the current 1,200 or so members of the House? Okay.
we haven't expanded it since the early part of the 20th century, so.
Okay, very interesting. Mr. Conway?
Immigration reform, in particular the abolition of ICE, and then reform of the Justice Department, that more so they can prevent it from ever being used as a tool for political retribution again. Those are nice things. Those are things I will propose, and those are things that won't pass until we get rid of Donald Trump.
What does the DOJ reform bill look like? What is
Well,
that?
I think we can. I think we need to do something like what was done in the the post-Watergate era about, for example, if you interfere with or your White House communicates with the IRS about an audit, that's a criminal offense. And I think there should be some sanctions applied to the interference with investigations and encouraging investigations. And, basically I think we need to codify the unwritten rules that were never codified after Watergate about when the White House can talk to the Justice Department about anything like specific, like an ongoing case.
Okay. George, I'll make sure that we'll impeach Trump and convict him, and J.D. Vance too. We'll have a Democrat president, maybe Hakeem Jeffries.
Okay.
And then
Top
legislative
legislative
priorities.
Yes, please.
To power the economy, we need immigration and technology. AI is coming, and we want to make sure that they create jobs and help people. I went door to door for Mayor Mamdani, and I love fast and free buses. They just have to be solar powered and self-driving, and gradually taking over, not taking everyone at once. And then for immigration, I would like to, for the WARN Act, when corporations lay off people, I would like to extend it for a little bit more than, I don't know, it's 90 days, so I think like another 30 days or more, so that people can stay and work.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn.
Accountability and affordability are my top two platform pillars. So for accountability, we're going to always have problems with parties until we have congressional and Supreme Court term limits. We need to have consistent rotation of our government to avoid consolidation of power and corruption within those positions. Within affordability, I want to support the bills that patriotic millionaires have put forward. They have talked about reducing taxes so people who cannot make the cost of living pay nothing, to reduce the burden on the working class, and then obviously to increase the burden and close the loopholes for the wealthy who are not being taxed in the same way that the working class is. We have enough money for every priority we have in this nation. We're just not collecting it, and that's why we're seeing an oligarchy. So I'm supportive of taxation reforms and also making sure we have governmental reforms.
Thank you. Top legislative priorities.
Yes, Laura's completely right. Wealth inequality in this country is not only a moral failing, but it's an economic security issue. And we will not be able to fix, in my opinion, any of the problems that all of us care about if we do not get money out of politics. It is insane. Since Citizens United came down from the Supreme Court in 2010, election costs have tripled. Billionaires made up, before Citizens United, 0% total of election spending. 2024, 20%. 2024 election cycle cost $16 billion. There are candidates, as I said in this primary, who are spending $1 million a week on ads. This is
They're super
super
PACs
PACs.
supporting them. Yeah.
And the way this works is with, it's a farce. It's, you have a super PAC, and if you give it to this independent group, you can spend unlimited dollars. That is insane to me. For the same reason, it's unlimited because money is speech. But if any of you wants to donate to any of us, you're capped at $3,500, and you have to disclose your name. It's out of control. Thanks.
Sorry. Overturn Citizens United and a second legislative priority?
Pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We have to fix the structural disadvantages that we face that drown out. There's a reason we all agree on so many issues. There's a reason that they don't ever get passed in Congress. It's because industry is writing the rules. Do we really want to let AI be regulated by somebody who is funded by Anthropic? I think that's insane.
Thank you. Ms. Schwalbe.
Yeah, I spoke to over 1,000 voters as we did our petitioning, and I heard healthcare, housing, and war in Iran. I've talked about the Health Security Act, and we've talked about housing, but my first priority would be to stop the senseless war in Iran. When I was a kid, and you guys are all lawyers, I learned there was this thing called checks and balances, and there were 3 parts of government, and I saw the cartoon about it, and I believed it, and I think what we've seen now is there are no checks and balances, and we need to restore that. But that 60 days is coming up. He did not notify Congress. 60 days is coming up, and Congress has to reassert its power. And there are ways that it can do that. I don't want to, you guys again are all lawyers, but there are statutory ways. They can stop hearings, they can call people into account. But our own representatives haven't even called for this, so I think it's time to really stop this senseless war.
Just for all the candidates, the audience is a mix of lawyers and non-lawyers. We're open to the public here, so we've got a mix of attorneys and non. Okay, lightning round here as we wrap up this round. Let's start this time with Mr. He started. Okay,
He started.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I might mess up at some point, so keep me honest. Yes or no, should congestion, we're going to start with you, Mr. Schlossberg. Yes or no, should New York expand congestion pricing further north in Manhattan? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Schwalbe?
Yes.
No.
Yes, with a carve-out for electric cars.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but not for residents.
Okay. Another lightning round here, and let's start with Mr. Conway. Choose one or the other. We heard a plug for Mayor Mamdani's push for free buses. That hasn't gone anywhere so far, but he's only 100 or so days in. But choose one or the other. Free buses throughout the city or more concentration on further discounts for people struggling with poverty and limited means as the city council has proposed. What would you rather see? Free buses for everybody or more focus on subsidizing for those who struggle to afford transit?
I would focus on the people who most need it. So the latter, I think.
Mr. Diep?
I'm a software engineer, so might be biased towards the free transit,
Okay.
self-driving.
The buses are too slow, so subsidies.
Free buses or focus the subsidies?
I believe we could do both, but if I had to choose.
Well, if they're free, then they're free for everybody. So you don't.
Right, but you could also subsidize people's commutes in other ways and not just buses. But anyway, I would say focus it on people who are economically disadvantaged.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the free buses. I'm a strong supporter of our new mayor. I'm excited about his agenda for change, and I'm all there with him, and I'll bring the federal government to help him do that.
Discounts for 4 people.
Okay. And lastly,
So I actually know a lot about this topic because of my experience working in transit.
and your answer is?
Well, I just want to make a point that
Yes.
in a number of cities that have done free buses, they've turned into roaming homeless encampments, and you have to be very careful about that. I do absolutely support, though, providing even free Omni cards to anyone who might be disadvantaged in the city. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Mr. Conway, starting with you, 60 seconds each here. Let's talk a little bit more about democracy. Some of you have mentioned some reforms already, but what are top priorities in terms of strengthening U.S. democracy and checks and balances? You obviously spoke a little bit about this earlier, but what would you add to your list? I know you have a long one in terms of lowercase d democracy reform.
Look, I think the most important thing is to restore checks and balances, as Nina said. The reason why we don't have checks and balances working properly is because we've had Congress abdicate its responsibilities. It's not for the courts. I mean, there are a lot of litigators come in and out of this building, but the courts can't run the government. The courts can't run 600 federal judges can't run the government through dozens, thousands of injunctions. Can't work that way. Wasn't meant to work that way. The framers gave us a Congress to act as a check on the president. And the check, there are multiple ways that Congress can check the power of a wayward president. One is through the power of the purse, and we need to be more, we need a Congress that is willing to stop funding things like it did with ICE. And then we have to investigate, impeach, and remove the criminals who are running this government.
Is there a specific charge that would be your focus of impeachment at this point?
No, violating the Constitution, violating the laws, depriving people of their constitutional rights en masse through ICE, the war crimes. They're actually not even war crimes because there was no war, bombing people in the Caribbean, violating the War Powers Act, the fact that the Trump family has made, what, $4 billion in the past 15 months.
Thank you.
The emoluments, we got to, I mean, we could go on, and it's going to be a long list.
Mr. Diep, your top democracy reforms that you would pursue, if any, in Congress?
Yeah, With last year's, or just with last year's election, I felt that ranked choice voting was great. It allowed people to cross-endorse. I'm not going to cross-endorse right now, sorry guys. I also like matching funds, that would be helpful. And to be honest, James Madison is the father of our Constitution, is an underrated genius. We're starting to see some pushback on Trump. No nuclear option in the Senate. Trump accepted the tariff ruling, and also he already knows he's lost the birthright citizenship case. So we're in good
Thank
shape.
you. Ms. Dunn, I know you talked about term limits already. What would you add to that?
So I really believe that we have affordability crisis because we have an accountability crisis. When we stop letting Congress members accumulate private wealth off their public offices, we will all of a sudden have middle-class candidates like me able to lead in Congress and making sure everything is affordable. So we have bills in Congress right now, but I would double down on preventing stock trading by members of Congress and any other member of the government. We literally have a Speaker of the House that has made over $100 million. And it is a shame that she has chosen to endorse a trust fund candidate who sits at this table who has not had to work to live in the city. And that shows you the depth of corruption in this establishment. So I want to see a Congress that is made out of people like you and me, people who work hard for everything they have and don't take it for granted, and definitely don't close the door behind them. We want healthcare that's affordable, housing that's accessible for all.
It's your turn anyway, so if you want to respond, but you can also add, I know you talked about overturning Citizens United, so that was on this list of democracy reform, but if you want to respond.
Oh, yeah,
and
I'm incredibly proud to have Speaker Nancy Pelosi's endorsement. She's a hero of mine. She's the backbone of the Democratic Party. She passed the Affordable Care Act. She is a champion for equal rights. No one has done more for working people, in my opinion, than Speaker Pelosi, and nobody understands political power in Washington better than she does. Again, if we don't get money out of politics, then these problems are going to continue. And that means ending super PACs, eliminating super PACs, but it also means mandating disclosure and transparency. I completely agree with Laura. Congressional stock trading is out of control and ridiculous. How have we not eliminated that yet? It's a complete conflict of interest. It should not be allowed, and I fully support a ban. But I also think, again, we need to protect the right to vote. If we allow the Republicans to pass the SAVE Act and eliminate mail-in voting, purge the voter rolls, require ID at polling places, we're living in a new Jim Crow era, and we're not going to get power back until we change that.
Thank you. We'll get to you in just one sec. Yeah, we're coming your way. Nope, we're coming your way.
I mean, we've talked about big money in politics, but I want to talk about the two things that are worrying me absolutely the most, and those are the SAVE Act and the Voter Suppression Act, which are currently going through. When I read the SAVE Act, I just couldn't believe what they were requiring in terms of documentation. So our trans brothers and sisters basically can't vote now, especially ones that Black and brown brothers and sisters who may not be able to get a passport. The same for women who've changed their name. Like, that is a serious threat to our democracy, as is Trump's Voter Suppression Act, which looks like it might actually go through, where people are not going to be able to mail in ballots. And again, we may not have all lawyers in the room, but we do have people who probably use early voting and mail-in ballots. If you're working, if you can't get to the polls, if you're at home, you can't vote. And that is specifically targeted at disenfranchised populations.
Thank you.
A couple of things. I would say that the money in politics, yes, it has to be changed and altered. But even in this CD12 forum, most of the people on the panel tonight have been excluded from forums that have already happened because they didn't have the big bucks to show that they were important enough. So there's stuff going on right in this forum and right in this election. I'd also say term limits are very, very important. I think in the new era of Congress that I want to see, a turning of the page, not focusing on all the symbolism, we need a robust, organic Congress where people come and go. I signed the term limits pledge, and it gives members of the House of Congress 3 2-year terms, and it gives senators 2 6-year terms. That's plenty. We have to establish a robust, like I said, flow of people. And then I'd also say that within the various looking for democracy, that we certainly should look at all people being able to vote. I'm against the SAVE Act too. I think it's been larded down with various issues. We shouldn't support it, but we need to find the way that everyone votes.
Thank you. Mr. Bergdale?
I've already mentioned increasing the size of the House, and I'll reiterate again, one of the reasons for that is that it actually reduces the amount of money that's necessary in order to run for a campaign, because you can actually get to know your local community. One other thing, and I agree with most of what everyone has already said, that hasn't been mentioned, though, is the appointments clause. Listen, Congress has the capability underneath the appointments clause to be able to decide, you know, we're going to have judges actually appoint certain positions. I really worry about the division that exists within this country, even when Donald Trump's gone, and God willing that day comes sooner rather than later. But when we get to a point where we have a Democratic president, we are going to have another half of this country that is not going to trust that person. We need to figure out a way to restore trust. And part of what I've actually proposed is the idea that the Attorney General, for example, would be appointed through a consensus of a group of judges. So you wouldn't have political partisanship. So somebody like Donald Trump could never exist again. This isn't about just getting rid of Donald Trump. It's about making sure that he can never happen again, because what has happened to our democracy over the past now 12 years has just eroded the amount of trust that everyday citizens have within our country.
Thank you. Ms. Schwalbe, let me start with you on this one. I want to actually follow up. I think it was you, Mr. Schlossberg, brought this up earlier. But there's concerns from a variety of corners about crackdowns on free speech in recent years, especially. Are there steps that you would take, specific actions and oversight, funding, legislation to protect free speech? And do you have any sort of ways in which you'd look to balance free speech protections, but also some of the other concerns we've seen? We have, it's obviously not the federal level, but in the city, we've had a lot of discussions around buffer zones recently. Legislation passed at the city council. They're considering other legislation in Albany around this, creating space around houses of worship and educational institutions. So in Congress, how would you think about protections of free speech, but also other protections like religious practice and so forth?
I think it's a both and I think that the Trump administration has done an excellent job of conflating free speech or restricting free speech with persecuting various groups. And I think the universities, what's happening at the universities is a great example. Academic free speech is critical to our democracy and our society. And we can't conflate that, what people say on a campus, with hate speech. My kids both are college students, and you know what I saw that do, and the crackdown on universities around the country at Columbia and elsewhere, was it restricted debate. And the Trump administration has convinced us that healthy debate isn't allowed. So I want to see us separate those issues first and foremost, and protect people as they should be protected from homophobia, Islamophobia, any forms of racism. I also want to say that, you know, for me, free speech is okay. Just take a look at my Instagram post and see what people say about me. I don't mind. They can say whatever they want. I'd prefer free speech than restricting speech. And I also find it sort of funny that, I don't know, just take a look at my Instagram post.
Thank you.
Jack, yours is probably similar.
Mr. Timmins?
Are we talking about free speech?
Yeah, again, the question is, are there oversight, legislative funding, you know, specific steps in Congress you would take to ensure the protection of free speech especially?
Well, I think free speech really has to be evaluated insofar as the way the hate crimes are happening. Last year in Manhattan, the biggest hate crimes were anti-Semitic, and they're under quite a bit of a burden, Jewish folks here in this CD. I mean, Mayor Mamdani has not made it easier as well. He said that Israel, in the first debate with Andrew Cuomo, was a genocidal, apartheid, and occupational country. Now, whether you agree or not agree, that's inflammatory. And to most people who are good, hardworking Jewish folk that I've worked with all my life, it's not cool to say those things.
I'm okay with it. I'm a good,
Okay,
hardworking
good.
Jewish folk, and
All right.
I'm okay with free
Okay,
speech.
don't interrupt, please. No, nice. So I think that that is the first thing we have to tackle in terms of this jurisdiction here. And then I think it has to be looked at across the country.
Mr. Bergdale?
So we'll get into foreign policy, and I have plenty of thoughts on that too. But as it relates to freedom of speech, I would really want to emphasize the freedom of the press, because the freedom of the press is what is really, really scary right now. And the attempts to intimidate and hold back voices, Don Lemon's arrest is one of the most prominent examples recently, but the defunding of NPR and preventing us from having true independent journalism, that is so critical to a free society that allows for the freedom of speech. And we need to make sure that we are providing the funding and the oversight necessary so that way every single journalist that exists in this country is able to operate without fear of persecution and for the DOJ to come down on them because they decide to report something that our dear leader doesn't seem to want to hear in the media. It is so, so critical every single day that we have people in the press that are advocating for the truth and that we're able to have an informed citizenry.
It's a question of oversight. We have a First Amendment that protects people from being discriminated against on the basis of the views that they express. But we have a government that rewards people for expressing views that support the president and punishes people for expressing views that don't support the president. And we see that today. The Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery merger was approved. That is the ultimate in infringement of free speech and democratic discussion, because we have the concentration of governmental power and the concentration of economic power joining together to eliminate criticism of the government. Now, that should be illegal. It is illegal, but we need Congress to investigate it, to learn about exactly what happened in the discussions between the FCC and these merger parties, between Brendan Carr and the people who run Paramount. What happened there? What agreements were made? We'd learn a lot if we did that, and we need an aggressive investigators in Congress, lawyers, to do that, and I want to be one of them.
Mr. Diep?
Yeah, free speech. I mean, today it's a lot more different, I would say, with social media. You could write a Substack post, you could go create your own podcast, or I guess Jack is a great social media expert. I'm not too, oh yeah, you too, George. I'm not too concerned about it. We all can post, it's just very noisy. But I will answer your question, which was just how I would protect it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would just make it more easier to, I guess, like internet available for everyone to post.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn?
So as a member of the New York City Bar Association Civil Rights Committee, I will always stand with free speech, even when I don't agree with it, and especially when I don't agree with it. But I want to talk about an issue that I think is overlooked in this campaign, and I think I'm the only candidate that's ever spoken about it yet. Section 230 of the Communications Act currently gives complete immunity to big tech. They are collecting our data, they're tracking what you say, they're rewarding algorithms that are radicalizing especially young men who feel disenfranchised, and they are creating the problems in our society, and to boot, they can give all that information to the government as a backdoor to the Fourth Amendment, our protections. So I want to repeal it or at least amend it. We should not be creating these superpowers that have more money than sovereign nations and who are running our conversations and our connections. We need to have better regulation, and when they are like newspapers, they are accountable for what they put on there, we will have a better democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Schlossberg.
Laura, I could not agree more with you. I think that we need to have public oversight of these algorithms because these companies have amassed an insane amount of control, and we regulate the airwaves that way. I would also say I think reforming defamation law is incredibly important here. In other countries, if you have a frivolous defamation lawsuit, you're liable for attorney's fees. There's something called the SLAP provisions here, which basically provide people who are sued for defamation in frivolous cases, trying to silence speech, that they are able to draw upon this fund in order to make their legal defense. I think we should expand that, and I also think that we should the Trump administration has been using defamation law to silence people. That's what Kash Patel is doing at the FBI right now, suing the Washington Post. That's what Trump did with all the law firms. It's a complete abuse of defamation, and it's something that Congress could pass could fix with legislation.
Okay, we are about to turn to foreign policy, as was mentioned, but before we do that, quick lightning round. It's been mentioned by a couple of candidates already, a call for term limits for Congress. So let's get everybody to weigh in on that. Yes or no, should there be term limits for members of the House? And if so, how many two-year terms? Mr. Bergdale?
Yes, absolutely. There can be flexibility in that, but I would say somewhere between 4 to 5 terms in the House, and in the Senate, probably around 3-year terms.
I would say 3 to 4 terms, but I pledge only to serve 2 terms maximum because I'm here for a very special purpose.
Yes, the term limit.
Yes?
Yes to term limits, 12 years on both sides.
12 years on both sides. Mr. Schlossberg?
I would prefer.
You might need to press the button there. There you go.
I think that there should be cognitive and age limits on members of Congress, but and I want to say yes on term limits. I really do, because the problem is real that we're all identifying people say they're way too long, and they control power. But I kind of think that the framers didn't include that in the Constitution for a reason, and part of the reason why is that, and how Congress works, for better or worse, I do think it's the best deliberative body in the world. You get to Congress and seniority is how things work. And so I do think that there is value in having leadership expertise and people who serve there for a long time being able to take leadership roles.
Appreciate all the thoughts. We're trying to do lightning on this one.
Oh, my bad.
You mentioned looking at an age and cognition. So I think that's. Do you have a plan on that? Do you have what you'd want the test to be, the age limit? What?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are medical cognitive tests out there available that I would defer to doctors, and I think that an age limit would be something that I would want public input on, but I think, it would have to be flexible to go with medicine as medicine advances and life expands. Can I keep talking? I'm not going to give you a number, but there you go.
I got your thinking. Thank you, Ms. Schwalbe.
Just got to say that the correlation, that's not age and ability.
Oh, yeah.
They're not directly correlated. So yes, for term limits, and somewhere between 4 and 5. And the other thing is this thing about running every 2 years is kind of crazy.
Mr. Timmins, term limits, yes or no? And if yes, how many terms?
I said yes before, and I signed the U.S. Term Limits Pledge, which 150 members of Congress, both Senate and reps, have already signed. I'm thinking about, because they're becoming generational seats. That's the elephant in the room. So it would be 3 2-year terms and 2 6-year terms for senators. It's been supported by 150 members of Congress right now. So at this time, could happen.
Thank you. So last big topic here, and then we'll wrap up with a few more quick questions. But our final sort of major topic is foreign policy here. Let's start with you, Mr. Bergdale, down there again. Please explain your view of your thinking in this campaign and how you'd approach it in the House if elected about the United States' role in the world and how you'd look to shift, if at all, foreign policy that the United States is involved with.
As a kid, I grew up in Iowa, for those of you that don't know. And one of the things that I always thought about the United States was how we were a representation of democracy and democratic values throughout the world. Now, that might have been a little naive as a kid growing up in Iowa, and I've learned a lot as I've gotten older, but I still hold those values very, very deeply, and that we need to be a representation of human rights and democracy. And it's one of the reasons that the Israeli topic in particular is deeply, deeply personal to me. We absolutely need to condemn Netanyahu and the war crimes he has committed. He is a war criminal, and we cannot continue to subsidize that government. I have Israeli friends, I have Israeli donors that have donated to my campaign who agree with me on this topic. I am not anti-Semitic, I am Jewish, my mother's side, and it's very, very important to me that we make sure that we're calling out the human rights abuses that we are seeing systematically play out within the Middle East. I have Lebanese friends that have reported back to me about what has gone on in southern Lebanon. Supposedly we have a ceasefire right now, and yet we still have people that are dying every single day. It cannot continue to allow for the Israeli government to operate in this lawless way, and I hold those values so deeply because it is a representation of human rights and democracy.
I think first and foremost, the United States has to restore its relationships with the allies, its democratic allies that have been so severely damaged by Trump, who cares nothing about alliances, only cares about who can provide him with a nice 747, and seems to worship corrupt dictators. We have lost so much as a nation by virtue of the fact that we no longer stand for the democratic values and that we have that have made this country great and has saved the world on a couple of occasions. And we have to get back to that. We have to get back to good relations with our traditional allies. We have to stand up for Ukraine. And we have to absolutely comply with international law and not defy it and not show contempt for it the way this administration has continued to do.
Haven't you called on unconditional funding for Israel?
I do support Israel. I do not support everything that they have done.
Said unconditional funding.
Let him
I support Israel. I strongly support Israel. I don't support everything that they have done, but they are an ally, and we should support them. And they are one of the few democracies in that area of the world. And I understand. I understand how people object to Netanyahu. I'm not particularly fond of him, but the fact of the matter is, we have to stand by our allies, and historically, Israel has been a tremendous ally to the United States, and there's so many Israelis who stand up against Netanyahu. We have to support them, and by allowing them to defend themselves.
Let me come to Mr. Diep, and then Ms. Dunn, you'll continue.
Yeah, so with how I'm looking at foreign policy, the New START treaty between the US and Russia, limiting the amount of nuclear weapons, has expired in February. It's concerning. It almost feels like a Cold War 2.0. So with that in mind, I'm just looking at the situation in Iran and how we do not want them to have nuclear weapons. And another thing is, with Israel, we need to stop sending foreign aid to them and also see about getting them to denuclearize, give up their weapons. And we could do that with the Glenn Amendment.
Ms. Dunn?
So I know that NY12 is going to lose the United Nations. We have not only failed to pay for that building, but other countries are positioning themselves to be the new home. And that should show us how far we are falling in the standing of this world. We cannot keep giving unconditional aid to Israel. This is insanity. We are seeing war crimes. We are part of that every time we give dollars. Now, defense is one thing for an ally, but that's not what's happening. We are killing civilians with our weapons that we have handed over. We cannot do this any longer. I am calling for an end of ongoing support of Israel until they agree to recognize Palestine as a state, to have a two-state solution, to abide by international law, to end human rights violations. And all of us should be calling for an end to a war in Iran. There are men sitting here that will be called overseas if this does not stop. So when we talk about international relations, we must realize we are falling in this world and we must have a moral center, and that starts with standing up to Israel, who should be our ally. They should work with us, not make us fall in the world standing.
Mr. Schlossberg?
I've opposed the war in Iran since day one. I think it's a strategic failure, and opposing the war in Iran, I have no sympathy for the Iranian government, but our country's at war right now. We have no idea really what's going on. I think it's a strategic failure, and I think opposing that war means opposing all funding for the war, and that includes providing offensive military assistance to the state of Israel. And I think that it is high time that we do that. It's hard to stomach what's going on. Beyond that singular issue, the United States has moved closer to authoritarian governments and away from democracies while breaking up our alliances and alienating our closest allies and friends, driving people into the arms of China. We need to remember who our adversaries are because we have them, and we need to make sure that we uphold the high standard of civil rights, human rights here at home, so that when we do go and throughout the world, that we're respected, because I don't believe that we are today.
Thank you. Ms. Schwalbe?
Yeah. I wish we had more than 1 minute to discuss this question. I've spent most of my life working as a diplomat in the area of health policy. I've worked in over 100 countries, and we've reduced this question in our debates to 2 or 3 countries. I want a full debate where we talk about the Rohingya, we talk about Sudan, 3 years just passed, where we talk about Uganda and gay people who are being stoned there. We talk about the destruction of PEPFAR, the U.S. government's HIV program, and the new extractive agreements that have been put in place where we are trading HIV life-saving drugs for minerals. We have so much to talk about on this topic, and I implore you in the audience to have a debate where the focus is U.S. foreign policy. Thank you.
Mr. Timmins?
I do not want to see any ground troops anywhere. It can't happen. Right now, the president's in a pickle with Iran. There's a war powers check-in on May 1. I think he's allowed to get 60 more days, but that has to be something that's bipartisan and that we protest as much as we can, that we have to get out of that situation. I also think in Ukraine needs to be supported. Right now, what they've done is heroic, and it also keeps us connected to, and we have to improve our relations with NATO. That's a severely important thing. And in Taiwan has to be given as much support as possible. China is our biggest enemy intellectually, with their stealing our patents and our intellect, economically and militarily. They're just waiting for the time, and if we deploy more troops to the Mideast, something could happen in the South China Sea. So I hope that we can recognize worldwide where we have to put our resources and no soldiers on the ground.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Conway, let me just come back to you for a second. You said in your answer before that the United States must uphold international law, but then you also, on the topic of aid to Israel, seem to not want to put even those conditions on that aid. Is that accurate? Is that an exception that you would make to the U.S.'s?
No, it's not an exception. It's not an exception. I think Israel should be held responsible for any violations of international law that it commits. But I also think that the United States should be held accountable for its violations of international law. I think it all applies to everyone. But the fact of the matter is, Israel is our ally, has been our steadfast ally for 40 years, and I would not abandon them because we have one particular prime minister who may have gone too far, and in this particular in the Gaza war. And I absolutely agree with everyone else that this war against Iran, as far as the United States' involvement in it is concerned, has absolutely done nothing to advance the interests of the United States and has done everything to damage it.
I just want to make a point, though, because it's not just Netanyahu. It is the entire government that has enabled him in his coalition. We are talking about Smotrich in particular, who has gone and had these settlers go into the West Bank, and they have killed innocent Palestinians over and over and over again, taken their land. They have nowhere to go. This is not Hamas. This is Palestinians that are living in the West Bank.
Thank you. All right, last few quick questions as we wrap up here. And as Ms. Schwalbe got at, and I said at the beginning of the night, obviously, nowhere near getting to every topic this evening, but hopefully those of you that liked what you've heard from certain candidates will continue to ask them questions and research them and all of that. Okay, last few questions here in lightning fashion. Mr. Schlossberg, let's start with you here. Yes or no, if Democrats take a House majority, Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker or someone else?
If the election were today, I would support Leader Jeffries.
Fair and free elections. Let's see who wants the job and then make our decision.
Mr. Timmins?
Hakeem Jeffries.
I would need to know who the other candidates are, but my support would not be with Hakeem Jeffries at this point.
I'd support Leader Jeffries.
I support him. I'm open to someone else if necessary.
Trump must be impeached, so I am going to get in line and plug my nose and vote for Hakeem, but that only for impeachment.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn, let's stick with you to start this one. No one's allowed to name Jerry Nadler here, who you're trying to succeed, although I don't know if anybody would. But other than Jerry Nadler, in case that would be popping to mind, who's a political role model of yours? One name, please.
With an explanation? Or just
No, just one name, political role model.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Mr. Schlossberg.
Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
Sarah McBride.
Okay.
Mario Cuomo.
Man, this is going to be a tough one. I mean, somebody that's in Congress right now, I would say Ro Khanna.
Okay.
Pat Moynihan. I was always a big admirer of him.
Lincoln was taken, so I'll go with Alexander Hamilton.
All right. And to wrap us up, Mr. Diep got at this earlier, actually, but let's start with you, Mr. Conway. One name here. If you couldn't vote for yourself in this race, who would you vote for?
Oh. I think I'd vote for Jack.
For Jack. Okay. Mr. Diep?
Cross endorsing? Interesting. I think Laura, just because she welcomed me when I first joined.
You don't have to give a reason, but that's very nice. Ms. Dunn?
Nina, because we need qualified women who are badasses in Congress.
Mr. Schlossberg?
It's like choosing between children. I don't know how, but right back at you, George.
Okay.
I got to say, I'd probably move to District 10. Brad Lander. I'm all for Brad.
Okay.
The most honest candidate here.
Well, that's a cop-out. That's what that's a cop-out. Our first cop-out answer. Mr. Timmins?
I'd say Alex Boris or Jack.
Okay.
You know, Nina, I was going to name you, but after that cop-out, I don't know. So,
Okay. Are you going to name anyone? Nina, okay. Want a second shot at it?
I'm
You're the
not-
only one that didn't choose someone.
I mean,
you know.
this one on the next debate.
Next time. Okay. Thank you to the candidates for a spirited conversation. Thank you all for being here. Don't forget to vote in June, and we'll see everybody out there.